Good afternoon, Cassie. All right. I believe you can all share or see my screen. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the PARCC and DC Science Technology Coordinator Training. My name is Anna Bulls with Pearson, and I will be walking you through this. So let's get started here. On the agenda today is going through resources, TestNav 8 information, PearsonAccessNext, technology setup, infrastructure trials, before testing, during testing, and after testing, as well as some additional information. Starting us off with resources. The DC resource site has been available since last year. We initially started with the PARCC site, and then we've been adding DC science information in here as well. On the resource site, you can find manuals and guides, anything about technology setup, as well as test preparation. So if you go to that link up there, that is your one-stop shop for anything you should need. And to find the user manuals, I've added a couple quick links here. Under technology setup are the technology guidelines and the user guides. Within the manuals area, there are test administrator manuals, test coordinator manuals, and the accessibility features and accommodations manual. And all of those are the current versions. Moving on to the training modules. Again, it's on the resource site under manuals and modules. There is a Welcome to PearsonAccessNext training module and a Welcome to TestNav training module. And both of those go step by step through anything you may need on either site. Jumping into TestNav 8. For any browser-based requirements, we do have a TestNav system requirements page. So should you question anything, any sort of system that you have, go ahead and pop out to that page. They are all up to date. As soon as we get done testing, even versions that are currently in testing will show up on that page. And one reminder I wanted to make sure I let you guys know of is that this was new last year, but browser-based testing is not supported for secure testing. So that would be all of your tests that are coming up in April, as well as any infrastructure trial or practice tests that you have the students sign in using the actual TestNav app. And then all of the supported device versions can be found and downloaded from our download.testnav.com site. And again, I've linked that up here for you all. And this is just a quick screenshot of our TestNav App Requirements. Again, this is found on the requirements page that I linked to. But just a quick snapshot of what is currently available for this year. All the different versions, where you can download them from. So anything in blue is actually a clickable link on this page. And hopefully you'll see everything that you need on there. As far as changes to technology requirements go, the best piece of advice I can give anybody is utilizing the TestNav 8 user guide. And there's also a recently updated section as well. That is going to be a perfect one-stop shop for any technology coordinator to go to, just to pop out and see what's available. And new operating systems supported this year are iOS 12 to 13.x, Chrome OS 74 through 79, and Mac OS X 10.15. All those are new as of fall, so I encompassed everything that you all hadn't seen yet past last year's spring administration. And again, all of those are noted in the recently updated link at the very top of this slide. As far as iOS automatic assessment configurations go, this is the big piece in the puzzle of configuring and getting your TestNav app set up. There are assessment configurations for Chrome, Linux, Windows, all of those pieces out there. But one thing in particular with iOS, and especially with iPad, is that anytime you set an iPad up, you have to allow the microphone. This is a one-time prompt, so if you do it once and you have 20 kids or 20 students test on that iPad, they'll have that microphone available to them anytime. It's just if you download a new TestNav app to a new or existing iPad, then you'll have to do that prompt again. And the other feature is the app self-lock prompt. This basically just prevents students from accessing any other app on the device. And when students log in to TestNav on the app, the error box in the screenshot I added below just confirms the app self-lock. So if a student clicks no, it'll take them back to the sign-in page. So we'll just want to make sure that every student hits yes on here. And that may be something that you all set up prior to a student actually jumping on. But just it's nothing new. It's been like this all along. But I just wanted to make sure. I know last year I didn't have the screenshot in here, so hopefully that helps out a bit. For the TestNav Desktop app, the link is again download.testnav.com, and it runs on specific versions of operating systems. And again, here's where I point you to the TestNav system requirements to make sure that you all have the information you need, as well as being able to ask any questions that you may have for any operating systems or versions that maybe you've upgraded to. There are no Java dependencies and no pop-up blocker settings required. It'll lock down your device automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. There's an identical student login experience on the Chromebooks and iPads. And it's compatible with touchscreen devices, which I know a lot of schools are moving to. As an additional note, we always push people to test for AT compatibility by completing an infrastructure trial. We just want to make sure that when testing day comes, nobody runs into any unforeseen errors, and typically assistive technology devices for those forms are the most commonly hit errors. So any testing for those is wonderful. And then if you need help setting up and using information for TestNav, we have a TestNav 8 online support guide that walks you through all of it, as well as has screenshots. So if you're trying to get everything ready to go, utilize that. We have our call center too, so feel free to call them. But yeah, if you like seeing visual things and walking through step by step, that link will take you right there. Here's just a screenshot of the download.testnav.com page. It shows how to download it, and if you have other platforms, your ProctorCache and system requirements, all right here in one page. And when students log into TestNav, this is what they'll see. All secure practice tests and secure operational tests will be accessed via the District of Columbia TestNav customer. And the practice test button on the bottom of this page will take students to the tutorials and the non-secure practice tests for each grade and subject. So as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, it's up on tutorials right now, how to go through all of those. And then it's also selected under the English Language Arts Literacy, but you've got all the grades listed there, and it'll scroll down. We have mathematics and science on here as well. So if you want students to jump out there and just take a non-secure test, this is the perfect place to go. What's new this year? TestNav 8 updates that were applied for spring 2020. The only really new things are some additional error messages that were added. Basically, these came into play based off of messages that people were receiving last year, so we updated it. Error numbers 1020 and 1021 is when the testing server cannot be reached. And I believe I have this linked in another place. But basically, it just means, like, it'll give you an error message, and it'll give you the steps on how to correct it. And both of those have pretty identical steps, as well as how to get through them. Error number 2022 is when a student is taking a text-to-speech test, and they're not on a supported TestNav version. So that's a pretty clear one. But then the error message will come up, and then you know that, hey, I got to update my TestNav version. Error 3043 is when TestNav is unable to communicate with the testing server. So say you lose internet access, you'll probably come up with this one, or if you're ProctorCaching and something comes disconnected, that will populate. Error 5048 is when a prohibited feature is detected on the testing device when TestNav is open. So if a student's got something else open on their computer or their iPad, TestNav can detect it, and it'll now throw an error. 5049 is when TestNav has not been granted accessibility permissions necessary to launch the secure test. And again, it'll pop up with a note saying contact your test monitor to start the test. But then we also give instructions on how to get that fixed. And then it basically says return to TestNav and sign in again. And all of those, the error messages can be found on the TestNav 8 support site too. Just so if anybody runs into one, this is what our level 2 call center is here for, and they help out with all of these. So if you do run into an error, don't feel like you have to only utilize our links. They just may help you get to the right place quicker. But that is, again, why we have our level 2 technicians. Jumping in to PearsonAccessNext. This is our screen when you jump out to your DC PearsonAccessNext site. We've got the customer support number, our hours, as well as the training site link, and the DC Pearson portal, which is where I was pointing you to for the resource site. And once you sign in, you will land on the home page. As of last year, we have updated everything for spring of 2020, and as you can see at the top of the page, it says 2020 Spring PARCC and DC Science. We've got all of the statewide testing window dates right here, as well as key dates, and any training site practice information links, a chat feature that you can chat our customer service agents. And again, nothing's really new. It was mainly just the date changes for this year. The biggest thing for this year is that ELA Math and DC Science all have the same testing window for 1920. It is April 6th through May 22nd for online testing, and then paper testing ends May 15th. And there is a week in there for spring break. I believe it's the second week of the testing window that spring break will go on. And then we've also provided the NAEP, the Access for ELL 2.0, the MSAA and DLM testing windows as well. And jumping into what you're all here for is the technology setup. So a big change for this year is that ProctorCaching is beginning to become a past commodity. Now that broadband access is far speedier than what it was about, well, even 5 years ago. We're no longer requiring schools and districts to utilize a ProctorCaching server. Schools, and this all information all came out, I believe it was this fall. But schools with bandwidth below 100 kilobytes per second per student should ProctorCache, and that's just our recommendation, so that any schools with low bandwidth have the ability to test without too many issues. They should be able to just pop on that ProctorCaching server and not run into anything. Schools with a bandwidth between 100 kilobytes per second and 200 kilobytes per second per student, we're suggesting that you conduct an infrastructure trial while not using ProctorCaching. Then you'll know if, come testing day, that if you'll have the bandwidth to utilize the no ProctorCaching idea. And then any schools with a bandwidth over the 200 kilobytes per student or per second per student, you don't need to use ProctorCaching at all. Again, this is new, so infrastructure trials are the perfect way to find out and confirm that you are adequately set up for testing. And any schools that are not going to use ProctorCache this year, they'll simply just delete the TestNav configuration by removing the IP address and the port fields from the Precaching computers section of the TestNav configurations page. And we'll get there in a little bit. I know it's a lot of words right now, especially if you're new, but you simply just remove those, and your computer name can even just say none, and you should be able to test with flying colors. Now, should you need to configure your ProctorCaching network, we wanted to make sure that we kept all this information in here. So we've got your TestNav 8 domains and ports that you'll need to enter, the Precaching local network port numbers, as well as the PearsonAccessNext domain and ports. And again, a lot of you are set up for Proctor caching, so it'll be the majority. Should you choose to not Proctor cache this year, you would just delete these. And just to circle around what Proctor caching is, it is a Pearson supplied software that is used in conjunction with TestNav. It reduces the bandwidth requirements to accelerate the delivery of the test content to each computer. You download that test content from Pearson onto a local server at the school or district level, however you set it up. And then that just eliminates the redundancy of having every computer have to pop back to Pearson when it's got a locally stored copy of the test in your area, which just helps with speed. And here's just a snapshot of kind of how I was trying to describe that. This is a little better to see, but if you've got a test cache station, those computers can quickly just pop there versus a TestNav server. But again, everything is much, much quicker than what it was in the past. So even with going all the way back from the classroom, the district, to the internet and TestNav service here at Pearson, it is far quicker now than what it was. And then the next few slides, and I'm just flipping through my notes here, are all surrounding the Proctor caching requirements. And I'm not going to go into a lot of depth here because I believe a lot of you are skipping the Proctor caching this year, but we wanted to make sure that it was included just as a backup should anybody want to look at any notes. It doesn't require an underlying server-based operating system. We've got Proctor caching hardware requirements, again, on the support page under Technology Setup. We've got the TCP ports included right there. And you will need a fixed internal IP address to utilize Proctor caching. And then, again, at the download.testnav.com, where you can download your new TestNav versions, we've got the ProctorCache versions out there as well, should you need to download anything. For Proctor caching setup, these are just the steps. So you'll download the installer and you'll run it with start the Proctor caching service if it's not already started when you open the installer. And then you'll basically just walk through the wizard and you'll add a Proctor caching computer to the TestNav configuration at either the district or the school level. And then also run an app check with a configuration identifier from the TestNav configuration in PearsonAccessNext on a client computer so that you can verify that your Proctor caching is functional. And we have a Proctor caching user guide as well that is also linked here, where you can configure your upstream proxy and refer to the Windows or Mac upstream proxy configuration section specifically. And here's just a screenshot again of where the download Proctor cache is with the link. So the next chunk of slides are all ones that OSCE and Pearson agreed should be available, but we're not going to go through these step by step. It basically takes you through the PearsonAccessNext setup for every piece of the puzzle. And again, those are also available in the Proctor caching user guide to help you go through things, but this is just a simple snapshot. Should you be looking at this document and need to go through this, it's all right here for you. One thing I will point out is the Precaching computer override option. It says this should be used with caution, and I specifically left that in there for anybody who does need to utilize Proctor caching. When you click the Precaching computer override, should your bandwidth be very low, you may run into slowness when students are out there testing. So I left that in here on purpose just to make sure that, if your bandwidth is at the very bottom, then definitely utilize that with caution. Now, should the students be running into errors of the test not being able to communicate very well, that overriding this Precaching button is something that we at Pearson do recommend that you click. So anytime you're having any sort of trouble, please don't hesitate to call our call center. And our level 2 technologists, they have access to all these error codes, and they can help walk you through any issues you have. And you can full-on trust when they say click this button that it is okay. They work with this stuff all the time, and they're wonderful about explaining any of this. So this is just one thing I wanted to touch on with Proctor caching. And I'll just keep going through. And we are pre-caching by test. So if you do need a Proctor cache, it is by test. I know some people were used to Proctor caching by test or session, but since we're slowly going away from it, we only have the pre-cache by test now. And just screenshots of the actual Proctor caching system. You can see how that all works. And then we've got statuses as to anything you should run into. And we've got these statuses for downloading. And then also, even if you have to change your password, we've got information on here. And then we'll jump into the infrastructure trial. I know many of you use infrastructure trials, and they are wonderful. They are used to confirm that, one, testing devices are set up correctly. Again, the biggest component of that would be any of your AT forms. Two, that your network can bear the full load of all of your students' testing. Three, if you're utilizing Proctor caching, that it's working appropriately. Four is a big one, is that participating staff know what to do for computer-based assessments. So say you have some new teachers or some new test administrators in the building, it's a great way to help them learn before the big day arrives. And five, that the students are familiar with the computer-based tools and the format. I know a lot of it has not changed in the past few years, but those grade 3 students are all new to this, so it would be great for them as well, or any new students in your schools. Infrastructure trial preparations. Prior to actually holding an infrastructure trial, there are technology setup pieces that need to be completed by the technology coordinators, and it's a set of tasks within PearsonAccessNext that need to be completed by you all. And the duration of these setup tasks can vary from school to school. So if you're quick through PearsonAccessNext, then you'll have no problem. And again, should you be new, go ahead and give our call center a call. That's exactly what they're here for, is to help get everything through. An infrastructure trial should take approximately 60 minutes to administer, and that is from start to finish. Schools are encouraged to provide any feedback on their trial to their LEA, and then LEAs can contact the appropriate state test lead with feedbacks and or concerns regarding software or hardware issues. Who all should be involved? Involve all your district and school personnel responsible for participating in the computer-based assessment. practice it like you would a regular testing day. It provides the opportunity to collectively evaluate the environment and identify or resolve any potential issues prior to your actual testing windows. Student participation is recommended, but is also not required. And it's up to districts and schools to decide if the infrastructure trial needs to be completed at the district level or at the school level. Where to start with an infrastructure trial? You will log into the training site, which is trng-dc.PearsonAccessNext.com. You'll make sure that all staff members participating have user IDs and passwords to get into the training site, and that they have reviewed the manuals and training modules. Refer to the PARCC and DC Science Infrastructure Trial Readiness Guide for complete instructions, and that is on the resource page under Additional Technology Resources, and I've highlighted it in red there for you. You'll need to complete the technology setup prior to conducting your infrastructure trial. So you'll configure your network. Again, you'll set up Proctor caching if it's applicable. You'll check device readiness, and then as well as TestNav and Proctor caching configuration. Districts and schools will need to complete the following in PearsonAccessNext prior to the infrastructure trial. You'll need to create sample students, create sessions, prepare the sessions, and print those student testing tickets. And then I just have all the steps going into your infrastructure trial and getting those all prepared. So you're going to log into PearsonAccessNext training. You'll make sure that you're in the correct administration. So 2020 Spring, PARCC, and DC Science. You'll go into Setup and Students, and then you see a Generate Sample Students from the Tasks menu, and click Start. And then that just starts the entire process of generating those sample students. You'll add them to a class, and that way when you're going to add them to a session, they're much easier to find, and then all you hit is Generate after you filled out everything in here. And this also gives you the number of students. So say you have 57 new devices that you want to test. You'll put 57 in that number of students, or you can do more. Just have those extra tickets to utilize. For creating sessions, you're going to use the Testing tab and Sessions. And from the Tasks drop-down menu, you'll simply click Create Edit Sessions and click Start. And then anything in here with a red asterisk, and anything in PearsonAccessNext with a red asterisk, those are all the required pieces. So you'll have to fill out the session name, your organization, your test assigned, your scheduled start date, form group type, and then for the pre-caching computer, again, should you have a pre-caching computer, it'll populate there. Or if you're not utilizing pre-caching, you'll simply click the Use Custom TestNav settings, and then all you have to do is type in none for your computer name and hit save. And you can also add your students in here before you hit save based off of your class. And here's just a screenshot of how to add your sample class in here. So if you put all your students in a sample class, you'll have all, say, 57 of those students pull up in there. In order to fully test this, a session has to be prepared before students can log in and take any tests. And this is at any time, whether you're utilizing the training site or the operational site. So you'll simply click Prepare Session, and then your session will populate every student's test. And in order to actually have a student log in and test, you have to click the Start Session button. And one other thing on this is, do I have a screenshot on the next one? Yeah, let me go to the next page. So on here you see Algebra 1, Algebra 1, Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3. And there are some lock features. After you click your Start Session button, you'll need to unlock each of those units so that your students can test. And once they're unlocked, you'll see the little lock button next to Ready disappear. And that's when you know that students can log in. In order to print your student testing tickets, you'll use the Resources button. And you can print just certain kids that you've selected, or you can print the entire session at once. And that takes you into where you should go before you start. So then, when you're ready to start testing, sorry, I should go back. So that allows you to then log in the students and start your infrastructure trial by testing them. Then when we get to before testing, this is more for the operational side. Your SRPMP data is combined into one file that is used to register students for the PARCC, ELA, Math, and DC Science assessments, and to customize the assessment to the student's unique accessibility and accommodations requirements. So when you're loading those student registration personal need profile, that is allowing our PearsonAccessNext system to read what the student needs and what tests they should be given. Data for all students must be loaded into PearsonAccessNext through either an SRPMP file upload or the user interface. And then we've got some instructions here on where to go for the file upload. And you'll import a CSV file with all the student registration and PMP information. This process is most commonly used when you have a large number of students that you need to import. Now, say you have a student that is new in the school and it's just one student, most people choose to just use the user interface to add that student and get them registered and assigned a test. Both methods require PearsonAccessNext to update the same student data field. So it all requires an understanding of your field definitions and file layout documents, and more information or more details are posted in the field definitions document under your documentation tab within your support piece of PearsonAccessNext. And this is just a screenshot of where you can find the student registration and PMP field definitions document. It is very helpful should you run into anything that you're questioning, or if you get an error on a file upload. That is a great piece to jump back and look at. For creating a new student, you'll go to Setup and Student, and then you select all the tasks. So if you're going to do this manually and not use your SRPMP import, you'll select basically all these tasks. You'll need to create and edit a student, and you'll have to go through all of the registration information. And then you'll click Start. And again, anything in PearsonAccessNext that is required always has the red asterisk. So you'll select your organization, your state student ID, the student's last name or surname, their birth date, their gender, their first name. And if you miss one of those and try to click Create, the system will error out and it won't save until that is populated. For registering students, you'll click the Register tab, and then you'll click on your student, and you'll just simply click the registered box it's got a little check mark in it right now. And again, you'll go through all of your registration pieces. So your grade level, your ethnicity, your race, anything that you would find on the registration piece is listed in here. And then managing student tests. So once you get the student created and registered, you can add a test. Again, you'll just fill out everything with the red asterisk for the student name, the test, the organization, and the test format there is at the bottom, so you'll online or paper. And as you go down, there's a couple more pieces that you'll have to add. And again, should you miss one, when you try to click create, it'll pop up if you've missed anything. And then jumping into how to create a session is the same way. Everything with the red asterisk, so you'll have your session name, and OSSI does require a specific naming convention. If you want to look at all of those details. And then you'll have your organization, what test it is, grade 3 ELA, your scheduled start date. There's a box for if the proctor is reading aloud to the students or selecting your form group type. And then again, with the pre-caching computer or using the custom TestNav settings, whether you're requiring ProctorCaching or not. And again, you can add your students in on this page and click create. And this is just another screenshot in more detail. So Mrs. Rogers added her grade 5 students to a class. So she was able to just pull in Rogers, and that'll pull in all of the students required. And then if you need to add students to a session, there is a task within the session screen called adding and removing students in sessions. You can jump out here, and I needed to find them within my school. So I started typing names or even IDs in this box, and then I select them with the check mark on the left-hand side. And once I've selected all the students I want, then I click Save, and that adds them to the session. Again, here's a screenshot just like you do when you're conducting your infrastructure trial. Once you have all your students in the session, your session is prepared and started, you're ready to print those student testing tickets. And one thing to note with the operational testing is that these tickets contain login and password information for your students for their live tests. The test tickets are secure material and should only be printed by the LEA or school test coordinator, and they should not be provided to students prior to testing. And I believe there are policy rules as to when they can be printed as well. Here we go. Here's more of the policy. I knew it was in here somewhere. So preparing sessions. When you prepare a session that assigns the test to the student according to their P&P information, this step can be completed one school day prior to starting the test session. When you prepare sessions, you can prepare multiple sessions at once. So say you have 15 sessions that are going to start testing on Monday. You can prepare them Friday. Again, this step assigns the forms to each student in the test session. The big reason why we added a prepare button in here is that when you prepare the test session, you can then see what form those students are assigned. So say Johnny needs a text-to-speech form and you're not seeing text-to-speech next to his name. You can then correct that before you start the test session so that Johnny has his correct test come testing day. And once this step is completed and the testing window is open, the session can start. And I provided screenshots here just how to do a combined view versus one by one. So say you have all 4 of those sessions that are going to start on Monday. Well, Friday you can click Prepare All Sessions, and it does it all at once. Say Algebra 1 General is the only one that starts on Monday. You can select that one session and click Prepare Session just for that one. You can do the same thing with the Start session. But that's just kind of a handy feature should you be trying to work multiple sessions at once. Here are the accommodation indicators that show up in the test session for those students. We've got your ASL, screen reader, non-screen reader for your AT students, closed captioning, text-to-speech, Spanish text-to-speech, and Spanish. So if you know Johnny needs that text-to-speech form and he doesn't have TTS next to his test in the session, you know that we got to get that corrected before he actually logs into test. And then after you prepare your session, the session must be started and the unit must be unlocked before students can actually log in and take their test. This can be done at any time before testing once the testing window is open and the session has been prepared. So if you remember, you can only prepare your session 1 day ahead of time. And so you can prepare your session and start it right away, or you can prepare and start your session right before testing. And then once you have all of that, you jump into operational reports. And I listed these out for the simple fact that I know a lot of people utilize operational reports. So I have broken down reports by before testing, during testing, and after testing, with just kind of a snapshot of what reports you guys may find as extremely helpful. So at the very top of PearsonAccessNext, you'll find a Reports tab, and you'll select Operational Reports. Within here, there are multiple different reports. I know one thing a lot of people like is the Session Roster Report, and that's kind of in the middle of the screen. It's a list of all your students for all different sessions and their status of where they're at. We have student counts that I know is another big one utilized, and that displays the number of enrolled and registered students, the students registered but not assigned to a test. That's exactly what it means right there. And then for P&P accommodations for student tests, that just lists out student tests and students and tests for specific accommodations. Again, another double check before you start that testing. And then students with an online test but not assigned to a session. So if I've got Johnny over here and I needed to fix his test, but what if I forgot to put him back into a session? That report will help me figure out why I don't see him anymore. And then the students where responsible district and school is different from your testing district and school is also the same for responsible organization. But that's one, if you've got a student that is taking their tests at different places, that's a good one to utilize so that you can keep track. When students transfer between organizations, you're going to utilize a work request. And this allows the student to be moved from your organization to another organization. So you have to send the request to the student's current organization or school. So if I need to get Bob from school A to my school, which is school B, I would send the request to school A, and then they will confirm and get him sent over. And this information does go up through OSSI, so everything is verified as well to make sure that those students need to or get to the correct place. But again, here's just the steps to go through those. And once you click the send request, again, that goes through OSSI to make sure that that student is transferred appropriately. For student transfers between organizations, you must authorize the transfer request from the new organization or school. So this just walks through the steps on how to confirm that enrollment transfer. And then we jump into during testing. For session management, administrators will need to lock and unlock the units for the students to actually log in and test that unit. Only one of the units that a student only one unit of a student's test can be unlocked at a time in a session. And then that unit needs to be relocked before unlocking another unit. Students can only log into tests if they are in ready or resumed status within PearsonAccessNext. So if the student is in an exited status, they actually won't have the button to be clickable for them to log back in. And this is just a snapshot of where you can see the unlock and the lock. And again, this first student on here is in an exited status, so their button isn't going to be clickable when they go in to finish their Unit 1. So you would just utilize this page to, I just move my arrow here so that exited student, and there's a drop down on here. I guess that's in a couple more slides to pull up and resume that student. And with this student in an exit status, there is student test and item progress information. So I can click on this student and see, okay, he or she has answered how many items, has visited, skipped or not answered certain ones, and then their last update. So here's the bigger one with more items in there. So this student looked at all these items. They visited them. It looks like they skipped number 3. Not sure why, but maybe they just didn't know the answer. So you can kind of see the progress of those students and how well they're getting through those items. So should you have any questions, this is a good resource to see. The student test status key, they're all different colors. So if you have an exited student, they show up in red. Anybody in active status, which means that they are logged in and testing, they'll show up as green. And then if they log out and they go into exited status, in order to get them going back into TestNav, they'll turn yellow for a resumed or resumed upload status. And then anyone who hasn't been logged in yet are gray and in ready status. Now, say this first student that's in exited status for Unit 1 doesn't come back to test or finishes testing. When they complete the test, it'll turn blue and it'll say completed. If they don't come back and you just have to complete the unit, it'll say marked complete. Again, those are listed in PearsonAccessNext, should you need a quick check to see. And here are the options on resuming students. If you're resuming one or two students at a time, the option 1 would be probably your quickest, where you can just select that down arrow and click resume. The other way is if you've got multiple students in a test session that need to be resumed, you would go out to Students in Session and you would select the task Resume Student Test. And it will pull up multiple students, and you can click one button for those. Like I was stating before, Johnny didn't have his text-to-speech test and needs it. So in the event that an incorrect P&P has been assigned to students, and the test session has only been prepared, the P&P options require that student be removed from the session, get the P&P updated, and then the student can be re-added back into that same session after changing his or her P&P. Once you do that, the system will realize, okay, Johnny's got his accommodations updated. He can go back into the session, and you will see TTS next to his name. The accommodation indicators within the Students in Session screen is what you'll want to verify that an accommodated form has been assigned to the student. And if you do ProctorCache, there's no need to recache when changing form assignments. If we're ProctorCaching at the test level, it's automatically done. For makeup testing, I highlighted some important notes here. Schools can choose to move the students who miss a day of testing into separate makeup sessions, or you can choose to leave them in their original sessions and manage their makeup testing using the combined view. So say you have two students that missed a day, but they're in different sessions, use the combined view, and then you can watch both of those students finish out testing without having to move too many screens. Another important thing is that units can be taken out of order for makeup testing only. If you're just regular testing, they do need to be taken in order. There are makeup testing directions for computer-based testing, and that guide can be found, again, on that DC resource support site. And it's linked right there for you. Makeup testing session checklist is a good guide to help you decide if you need to make a new testing session or not. If you keep the original testing session, simply unlock the unit that student will be testing. Use the original student testing ticket to log in. You'll administer the test, and when the student is finished, they simply submit. If you create a makeup testing session, you'll have to create the new test session, add that student into it after removing them from their old session, and then you'll unlock the unit that the student needs to test, print and use their new testing ticket, administer the test, and again, have the student submit the unit when they are finished. So if you create a new session, you're going to need a new testing ticket. If you keep the student in the old session, use that old ticket. For any students who are in an exited status and maybe they didn't finish the items or logged out of TestNav and it just says exit, you do need to mark them as complete at the end of the testing window. So the reason in this one was student was unable to finish the test. You'll click the unit that they didn't or that they were unable to finish, and then you click Mark Complete. And that takes us through the big part of testing. So again, I've got the operational reports that can be found most helpful for during testing. The students currently testing online report is really good. Should you want a snippet of that moment in time as to who is testing. Students who have multiple tests, that's a really good one as well. And then again, session roster. And I will let you know an update on session roster. It will provide you with information for those students for all units that they're testing. Last year, the report pulled a full overview of the students' tests, and this year it's broken down by unit, kind of how it was in the past. So that is a really awesome update for this year, and I hope a lot of you will be happy. I know a couple specific people will be, but I'm sure more people will be as well. Again, some common error codes. These really haven't changed. I think these are the ones that people run into most often. I'm not going to read all of them, but wanted to just keep them on here because they're ones that happen quite often. 3005 is a big one, where TestNav has detected that another app attempted to become the active window. You know, a student's trying to pull up something else while they're in TestNav. Well, TestNav's going to catch that and shut down. Let's see here, what's another one? ProctorCaching computer, not being able to connect to it for 8026. Hopefully moving forward, this is one that'll just come off the common error codes list as we all start moving away from ProctorCaching and our bandwidths are getting better. Let's see, command option escape has been typed. TestNav shuts down and you'll have to restart your test. Yeah, other one. AirPlay. I know that this was a big thing in the past, where TestNav detects that AirPlay is running. Maybe a student's trying to listen to some music before they sign into TestNav and forget that it's still going. AirPlay, well, TestNav will catch that it is running. Even copying stuff to a clipboard in the cloud, TestNav detects that as well. The most common error code, I'm guessing, is this one. Now I don't have statistics on any of this, but the username and password you entered is incorrect. A lot of times this comes up when people choose to have students be put in a makeup test session, but they hang on to that original student testing ticket. So definitely just make sure that all of your student testing tickets are the most current version, and that those test sessions are ready to go and started, and students should not have any problem. Troubleshooting steps for test administrators. Should you run into any issues, a good thing would be to resume the student within PearsonAccessNext. Have the student log in again on the same testing device. Using the same testing device is really key, because should errors happen, that testing device is set up to capture the student's responses. And one big thing our level 2 agents say is make sure that student doesn't move so that we can capture exactly what happened on our end and help make sure that error doesn't happen again. Should errors or multiple students have issues, definitely get a hold of technology coordinators, and if your technology coordinator or you all have any further questions, do not hesitate to reach out to Pearson. That's what we're here for. That's why we've got our level 2 agents that are fully engulfed in all of all things technology questions related. And I highlighted it here that do not move students to another testing device unless the student safely exits the test using the logout feature. Again, it's to help those responses from being more difficult to retrieve on our end. If the student stays at that device that they're having issues with, our technologists can get to those responses and pull them over to our server. And then should you set up your TestNav configurations, we do have secondary save locations, and TestNav will always look in the primary and secondary save locations for the student response files when the student logs into the test, which is, again, playing part of that, keep the student on that same device. For any TestNav early warning systems or error codes, these are the links to anything and everything you may need. We utilize these a lot. If a call comes to me at my desk, I definitely come out here and check that TestNav error code just to see what it is. Maybe I can help answer it. More than likely, I send it over to our level 2 technicians because they have the ability to pull all that information so much quicker than I do. But definitely utilize these links should you all need anything. TestNav expected behaviors. So not all TestNav problems come with error messages, and not all problems are technical issues. So there is a chance you could run into something that isn't listed on our site. We do have an expected behaviors document that's available on the resource site. It's designed to help users who encounter anything within TestNav that are different than anticipated or don't appear to be working properly, but they're non-critical limitations or expected behaviors. So a couple things, examples here is that the notepad can't be resized. Well, no need to put a scare on everybody, but that's just something that TestNav can't change. Or if an exhibit is within an item and that can't be resized. The magnifier tool will not magnify the display on the graphing calculator. These are just known issues, and I think it's good for all administrators to understand these to help ease any issues or questions that come up from students as they are testing. And then jumping into after testing, once the students are done testing, the sessions must be stopped for those students to be fully scored. The students, in order for the session to be stopped, those students must be in a marked complete or a completed status in order to stop the session. Should you have any student in a ready status yet, they should be removed from the session before it stops. And any students in an exited or resumed status can be moved to other sessions. So that fourth line would be if you have a student that needs to make up testing or finish testing, but you want to get this test session stopped and put that student with others, you'll simply just move them over. For marking student test complete, I just did a quick snapshot of this. They must be marked complete before the test session is stopped. My notes on here just say Pearson test. A lot of them will say end of admin for the reason, because you really wouldn't need to mark them complete too often unless the administration window is over. So I simply would just click the box next to exited and type in my reason, and then click the mark complete button. So say I've got this Algebra 1 session that all of these students are in a ready status. I would simply just click all of the ones that needed to be removed on the button on the left-hand side, and then click remove, and that'll take them out of my session that I am stopping. And critical warnings. This is something that was updated this year, so you won't see as many critical warnings as what you may have in the past. At the top of your PearsonAccessNext page, there is a flag. If it's red, you more than likely have your student critical warnings, any accommodation reminders, or email delivery failures. The two most common are the critical warning and the accommodation reminders. If you click on those warnings, so what I did in the bottom screenshot was I clicked student critical warnings, and it took me to the page with all the students with those warnings. You will utilize the register student tasks to resolve and view those warnings. The two big keys with this are the English learner active status and student with disabilities. Those are the two pieces that are tied to these critical warnings. There are more that associate with the English learner active status. And should you want to find a full list of those critical warnings, the student registration personal needs profile field definitions document does verify any area of the personal needs profile that has a critical warning on there. In order to resolve those critical warnings, you will pop out the register student task to display the warnings. And in this example, the student's errors are with the student status. You've got English learner active status is blank, and the student with disabilities is also blank. So it says the value is missing. You simply just fill those fields in, click save, and your critical warning message is gone. All right. So once you have all those updated, you're good to go. And once testing is fully finished, you can purge your Proctor caching content should you choose to Proctor cache. And that's just quick picture of the purge button. For after testing, again, the top operational reports, any online student tests that were marked complete is a good report. Students with warning to make sure that those are cleaned up, which we just went through. Student tests that have been assigned but not yet completed is always a good one, so that you can make sure that all your students have completed their testing. And students where responsible school or district is different from the testing school or district is also a good one should you have a student that tests at a different location than where they are typically enrolled. And last but not least is just our additional information. For student readiness, we have practice tests that are available for all accessibility features and accommodations, including text-to-speech, sign language, screen reader, closed captioning, large print, and Braille. And those are located both in the PearsonAccessNext training site as well as on the resource site under practice tests. And again, the tutorials for all of those are also on the support site or within the TestNav app itself. And should, for some reason, you have a device that is not set to District of Columbia, when you jump out to TestNav, there's a simple way to choose a different customer, and then you can find District of Columbia in there. The PearsonAccessNext support page has a lot of documentation that is very good to utilize when within PearsonAccessNext for all your file layouts, field definitions. Got links to hardware, software guidelines, user roles within PearsonAccessNext. Again, the training modules and our customer support lines are always up on all the pages, so that, or I should say on the home page and the support page, so that should you have any questions, those numbers are easily available. And this is just a snapshot of that support line with the phone number and the hours. Again, the same number is listed on our support site. So go ahead and contact Pearson for any PearsonAccessNext, TestNav, shipping, additional orders, anything related to Parker DC science of that nature. Go ahead and contact us. Should you have any questions during testing, give us a call on that number. And if you've got live students testing, then, that sounds kind of funny when I said that. If your students are live testing during the admin window, give us a call. We will directly send you to our level 2 agents so that those students are not sitting and waiting with an error message too long. Our main goal is to get your questions or concerns or errors corrected and have you going as quickly as possible. And this is just a link to the PARCC Accessibility Features and Accommodations Manual that is listed on the support site. Does anybody have any questions? All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Sorry about that. Thank you everyone for joining, and please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you all.